Hello? Okay, let's get started. Before we get started, just make sure you know we need to have a double check of our lab marking by the end of this term. So just finally have a check of all the markings for your lab. And if you do not, if you find some of the lab like have empty results or you score 0 or very low mark, please contact me as soon as possible so we can fix the problem. Okay, so yeah, the content today. Firstly, we will have a look of the final exam about the specification and how to prepare and the material that we need on the exam. But I think Sally have already explained all the specification for you this week, right? So, oh sorry. So I won't take lots of time on this part. Oh, yes. Can you hear me now? Hmm. Okay. It's weird. Okay, the first part will be the final exam, just some important information about the final exam. And then we will have a quick look from week 5 to week 10 about the important knowledge point we may need to pay attention to, and maybe have a look of some calculation practice. And the last one should be the assignment, because some of the students sent me an email yesterday and said they haven't started yet. So I'm quite worried about their assignment. So I will firstly introduce a simple program structure in case you have no idea how to do this assignment yet. And then about how to debug, how to make you get higher marks on the assignment. And the most important thing is the submission format. And we will talk about it later, including the report and how to do the submission. So is my voice clear? So have a look of the final exam. Here are some important information. It worth only 40%, but it is a double pass, which means you need to at least have 16 in the final exam to pass this course. If you fail to do it, you will fail this course. So final exam is very important. Make sure you have the understanding on the concepts you have learned, and it will be like the midterm exam, but it will not that hard. So some multiple choice plus some short answer at most 2 or 3 sentences in this answer. And there's no programming stuff, nothing related to the Python or Java and the lab content. So you are not required to log into the VLab to do this final exam, just like a paper exam. And it would take 2 hours to do the exam. So make sure you prepare for the final exam really well. The time is really limited. Let me know if you have any doubts for the final exam. So let's see how to do the preparation. The first one should be the lecture slides. This thing is really, really important. Oh, in here, sorry. Oh, sorry. In here. So you would require to download all the lecture slides before the exam to make sure you can access all of them during the exam, because our system may get stuck and the web CMS may very busy at the exam time. So I prefer you to download all the content in advance and then merge them into a single file, so you can simply search some keywords to find the exact place you want to find, and you don't need to switch the files and find the content you need, just like we did in midterm exam. And the computer environment setup, I don't want to talk a lot about that, but make sure you have get your mobile phone ready, because we are required to connect to the internet and make the submission. So if you lose your internet during the exam, you may have big trouble. So I guess you can use your mobile phone to set up a hotspot in case you lose your internet connection in your home. So just make sure your internet is okay with that. And let me see what else. I think nothing special, but yeah, just make sure you have the comfortable environment that can do the exam. And you should install the Zoom in case you have any question with the exam. Like if you need any clarifications for the exam, you can join the Zoom meeting and type your question on the chat. So they will have a meeting room during the exam. Okay. And next page is about the material we may need for the final exam. Lecture slides, this one is really important. I have mentioned it a lot of times. And the weekly quiz, basically the homework we did every week. So what you need to do is to have a review of all the quizzes and examples on the lecture slides, as well as the weekly homework. So you can print it and remove the answer from it and just do it again and check, see if you have any wrong with it, to make sure you understand all the concepts of these important quizzes and examples. Let me show you the quizzes on the slides. So not this one. like this kind of slides. Just go through them page by page, and if you have enough time, like if you can start preparing from today, then you can also have a quick review of the recording of this course, so you can like play it with like 2 times faster and go through all the content with the slides and pay more attention to this kind of quiz. So make sure you know the answer. If you have doubt, you just go back to the recording and check what is the answer for this question. Okay, this one is really, really important. Just go through all the quizzes in here. I think you must be fine and get a very high mark for the final exam. And there are more practice on the GitHub link. I have upload some stuff into our GitHub, and I will upload more after this tutorial. You can simply go to the page, GitHub link. I will put all the content inside this folder. You can see, as you can see here, we already have some of this under this folder, so you can check them one by one. There are some notes that you may find it useful. And have a quick look of it. So I think that should be enough for the final preparation. And final exam about the content from week 1 to week 5 should be like, I think exactly the same as midterm exam. There will be the general knowledge about the network at the week 1 and week 2, and week 2 and week 3 should be the HTTP and DNS. It will ask you about some HTTP stuff like status code. It will ask you what is a code 200, yeah, something like that, or give you a request of HTTP and ask you to answer some question like what is this method and what is the result of that, etc. And the DNS, I don't think there much stuff. It's all about the DNS type, right? Most of the content related to DNS is covered by the lab. So there are not much thing on the final for DNS. But yeah, but you still need to have a look of it. And the email should be a very easy question about email, I guess. So in this part, should be really, really easy. But for the computation, for the throughput and delay, sorry, I lose a Y here. It will be a little bit harder than before. Why? Because in this part, they will combine the calculation with the TCP stuff or with the IP stuff. So you are not only need to consider the four different kind of delay, but also you need to figure out the concepts for the TCP or IP stuff. So they will merge different knowledge point together and ask you to do the calculation. And the sockets multiplexing, I think this part is not really important, but for the UDP, then they must have some stuff related to UDP. And the reliable data transfer, it may ask you some question about the version of it. And yeah, like RDT 2.0, what is the difference between 2.0 and 2.2 and 3.0, like something like that. So make sure you understand the difference between the different version of RDT. And the TCP link, yeah, this stuff is very, very important. I think that this stuff is the most important stuff for this course. So make sure you know everything about TCP, like how they establish a TCP connection and like congestion controls, other stuff, lots of stuff covering for the TCP. So pay more attention for this part. TCP will be the most important concepts from week 1 to week 6. And of course, the congestion control, they must test this part because it is related to TCP to make sure you understand the concept. I think if you, what kind of question it will ask? Probably we will have a look on the slides later. And from week 6 to week 9, we should pay more attention to this part. Why? Because we have already tested your understanding from week 1 to week 5. So we want to test more about week 6 to 9, which means you should pay more attention in this part than the previous one. The IP stuff, the data plane, the IP stuff should be easy, I think. It may have some multiple choice or a short answer question related to IP. I think it should be how to calculate the IP address or the mask, the routing, ICMP. I think just go through them one by one. Make sure you know how to do the calculation. So for these two parts, I think most of the calculation will be okay, these two. And make sure you know the concepts for the collision avoidance and detection. And last one is the security, will be the easiest part for the exam. So you have some basic concept for the security. Just go through all the slides and you will know the answer. Oh yeah, Reno Tahoe. Are you talking about this part? The TCP flavors? Yeah, of course. They will definitely ask something about it. Reno Tahoe is in here, congestion control. So they must ask this kind of question during the final exam. So make sure you know what is Reno and Tahoe and what is difference for them. Basically, they will give you a like this kind of picture like this and ask you what is this phase, right? And what happened here and what happened here and what is the flavor of this TCP connection, right? We have already done some practice with it during the lab, so I think you should know it. It will be easy. And yeah, I think that's all. Probably we will have a look of the lecture notes later and see what is the important stuff. Let's do it now. So just download all the slides from the website and then merge them. Like you can use the small PDF to merge different PDF file into one, so you can save your time if you need to search. And let's start from TCP construction, I guess, because I have already covered all the concepts from week 1 to week 5 in tutorial 1. So if you miss something, you can go back to that recording. So we will start from the congestion control. Where is that? Probably here. Let's have a look of the context here. 3.7. In here, the important knowledge points for congestion control should be here. Let's go back to the top of it. The first concept you need to know is this one, CWND. What is this one? It is the congestion window size to control the speed of our connection. Because we want to stay at a highest speed as possible. If we exceed some exactly speed, we will start to have some congestion event like packet loose or the delay or some packet missing or something like that. So we want to have a very high speed and we'll need to make sure all the packets can be sent properly and successfully. So that's why we need this kind of stuff, CWND. And make sure you understand the other stuff is AIMD. It's here. AIMD is another concept you need to understand. And the slow start, of course, they will always ask you these two kind of stuff. And combine these two stuff together should be the TCP flavor, which is the TCP Tahoe and TCP Reno. So you need to figure out what is the difference between these three, the new Reno here. So make sure if they give you this kind of graph, you can understand what kind of TCP flavor is this. And of course, the slow start threshold, how can we calculate the slow start threshold after a congestion event? So if you don't know, just go back to the slides and have a look of it again. This kind of question, I think it must be in the final exam. Go through this quiz and you find that's all for the congestion event. And next stuff is the IP. Yeah. So actually they have specified the important stuff here, IP, NET, ICMP. You can see, understand they have two different plane for the network layer, data plane and control plane. And what else? Like generalized forwarding and software defined networking. Nope, not really. We don't need to care about this part and this part. Just know the basic concept for IPv4 and IPv6. Let's have a look of them. I will skip the overview of it, just some basic idea of it. Okay, let's start from IPv4. The first thing you need to pay attention is this one. how can we convert an IPv4 address into binary format like this? You need to understand how can we convert this kind of stuff. If they have a simple question related to IPv4, it will be like this, but they will always combine these concepts with other stuff like the mask calculation. Let's have a look. Subnets like this. Subnets concept network mask here. So they will ask you to do the calculation related to the mask and the subnets. Like if they have this kind of subnets, how many computer can they support at the same time for this subnet? And if they want to expand it, what can they do? Something like that. I think they have some example behind the slides. So just do all this example under this slide. Like this. They will have several calculations related to this part. So make sure you can do all the calculation for this part. Yeah. And understand the prefix of it. Address formats. If they give you this kind of address formats, you should understand what does this mean. Yeah, and how many IP address under this area? If they give you this address, how many machine can they support under this address? So it's just some basic calculation. Just go through them, then you'll be able to understand it. And I can make sure they must test this kind of question. And yeah, just go through them very quick. The HCP, of course. The idea. This part is not really important. Just know the concept of it. I think most part of for the IP stuff will be the calculation related to the IPv4 address, and of course the IPv6. Let's have a look of IPv6, but they will not test a lot about the IPv6, just some basic concepts. I think most of the calculation will related to the IPv4. And yeah, that's the hardest part. And next stuff is the IPv6. NAT, how it works. They should have a calculation stuff related to NAT and AT. Something like this. Just go through decrease. I think the NAT is a very simple concept. It's just like how the router works. To manage, they can hold different computer with a single IP address. Yeah. And what's next? A link layer. Link layer is in here. Let's have a look of the content. Error detection. They may have a multiple choice about the concepts of error detection. ARP, Ethernet, Ethernet is always tested during the final exam. And switches, you should know what is the difference between switches and routers, right? And yeah, not much stuff. For this part, they have something like C collision avoidance stuff. Let me search. It's too much. Collision. I think for these slides, they may test you about the collision avoidance stuff, how Aloha works, and what is the CSMA. This part is always be tested. Collision detection, like if there are lots of computers in under the same internet, how can they communicate without any collision? Because there are only one computer can use the pipe at the same time. If two of them sending data at the same time, then we call it collision, and all the packets will be dropped. So this part is about how we detect the collision and avoid it. Not sure if they cover the wireless collision detection. If they do, just go through and understand how it works. This kind of calculation will not be tested. Just know how it works like this. Know the idea. And finally, the last one. Last one is security. Normally, the security will be very, very easy. Some general question related to the security. Even without the slides, you can answer it easily. But in case they may test you about some concepts related to the encryption, like this. What is the different kind of encryption? Just go through the slides. There are, I think, two different kind of encryption here: symmetric and asymmetric. Don't worry about the calculation here. It will not be tested. Just know the idea. Just understand this kind of graph, how it works. Yeah, it should be easy for you. You don't need to fully understand how they do the calculation like here, but you need to know the idea of it and explain it. Usually they will test it with the short answer question for this part. And should be a free mark for you because this part is always very easy. Like this. One of the year they have tested this question. Like there is a bad woman standing in the middle, and Alice and are trying to send in some stuff to Bob. And is it possible for this bad woman performing an attack? So you just need to explain it. I think most of people will get marks if just answer this question. Not really hard. I think the final exam should be very easy for you because as you can see here, not much stuff. The calculation stuff we will at this part, the IP and address, and not much other calculation for the final exam. Probably they will test some calculation about the throughput and delay and TCP stuff. Like they can combine the TCP with the throughput calculation and throughput calculation plus the IP stuff, IP addressing. This just go through all the slides, then you will get a good mark. Please let me know if you have any doubt. And if we don't, we can have a quick look of the assignment. For the assignment, we will firstly have a look of the program structure. If you have already done your program, just have a look of this part. I'm not saying you should follow this structure, but just an example here, in case you have no idea how to do this assignment. Since we still have like 2 or 3 days, and you may go to do more stuff. Please give me a sec to open it. Okay. So in here, I just introduce a very simple example about the server and client structure. As you can see here, at the top is the server, and the structure for it, the server will handle all the incoming connection for the client. If like in here, we have a client A connected to the server, it will just establish a subthread or sub-process with client A to handle this one. And if there is an other client connected to the server, it will establish another subthread and process to client B. And inside the client side, you can see there are 2 sub-process or threads inside a single client. The first one is for the message receiving and display. And the second one is for the sending message to handle the input from the user and then send it. Because we are required to send and receive at the same time. So that's the reason why I need to implement 2 different processes to handle these 2 tasks at the same time. And I think the hardest part is to implement the P2P stuff, right? So how can we implement a P2P stuff? Some students may try to do it through another sub-process or sub-thread. It is not necessary to do that. You may say, oh, probably I can just create this kind of sub-process again for the P2P, right? But actually we don't need to create a new process because we can use the process to handle all the P2P connection. So let's have a look at how it works. So firstly, the client must be connected to the server, right? Because they have to log in. So the server will store the information about the log about the, what is that, socket and address for every client, right? To make sure that probably you will store in here. But if you can make it to store just under the server, like at a dictionary or somewhere else, to save the socket and of course the address of all the clients. So it will know what is the socket and address for every client. So why should we store at here? But if the client A want to start a private with the client B, then it can send a request to the server, right? From here to the server. It's really ugly. It can just fetch the socket and address of client B from the server, and the client A will be able to connect it to the client B like this. So firstly, he will fetch the information of client B, and then you will be able to know the address of client B, and then it can send the message to client B and vice versa. The client B can also get, but actually the client B does not need to fetch the information from server, because if the client A connected to client B, then the client B will be able to know the socket and address of client A. Yeah, but you can also fetch it from the server, doesn't really matter. So that's how it works for P2P part. So it should be easy because just based on the server and the client, we don't need to do much modification, just simply adjust the structure of the server. And you may have totally different structure than this one. It should be okay. Just make sure it is working. And yeah, that's all for this structure here. Probably we should say here we have a main thread for handling the input incoming connection from the client. And for these three parts, they have already implemented in the example. So you don't need to do any modification, but you may need to store the socket and address when you create a new subthread, right? So that's the only difference. And for the client side, you may like create two different process, and you can keep one of them as the main process. Like you can use the sending message as your main process. So you only need to create one sub process or thread like this. But client A or client B needs to create a socket server for another client B. I don't think so. Why should we create a new socket server? Because I have already created a socket server to receive the information here. At this part. So this sub process will be able to receive all the incoming data, no matter from the server or from another client. Okay, probably I know what you mean. If you may think if my structure is like this, if the client A want to send a message to the client B here, right? We want to send the message to this sub-process. You may say we may need to send a message from this thread to the server, and the server will resend the information to through this road, right? Probably what you mean is if you want to send a message from here, you will go to here, go to this subprocess, and go to server, and reach another thread or process, and then reach here. Is it correct? Yeah. Uh, yeah, you're right. At this point, that's how it works. But if we already know what is the address of client B and what is its socket, then we can directly send the information to client B, right? Because here, the connection with client B is not only for the server, it can also accept all the information from the outside, like client A, client C, client D, etc. Because it is listened from the message from the outside, right? And it is possible to us to create a connection just from the client A to client B directly, if we know what is the socket and IP address of the client B. Yeah, so how to get the socket and IP address will be another question. But if you can get it, then you can simply send the message to client B. Yeah, in my point of view, you don't need to have two different output threads, but of course you can have different structure. Like you can create a new thread to handle all the P2P stuff. Doesn't really matter, just make it work. So this structure will not make it really messy. So the structure will be stay simple. As you can see, not much modification at this part. The basic structure remain the same, but we just need to fetch the information from the server about the socket and IP address for each other. And you may need to add some verification. Yeah, we get the output string of client stored in the server and then directly send message. Yeah, right. Yeah, but if you have already done this part, just do not change your structure. This one is just an example for those students who haven't done P2P part. But if you have already done it, probably finish your report at first. Just make it work. Yeah, if you have time, you can try the simple way. But yeah, you will not lose any marks if you make it very complex. We only care if it is not working or not. And for the there's no stylish mark. I think in my point of view, there's no stylish stuff. I may need to double check of the specification. Let me check. Yeah. So we will mark your assignment based on the document here and the table here. So that's how we mark. We will test them one by one. Probably for each functionality, we'll have 3 different test case, I guess. Yeah, and test them one by one. If you have successfully implemented all the function here, then you will have 4 marks. But how to debug is if you have already finished all your program, just go through here. You can see example interactions. So just do the example here one by one. You can open 3 terminals and VLab, and then just run the command like this and see what is the output of it. Should be exactly the same. So do not have like different output as this. So you must have exactly the same output in example. And of course, how you can run the program. I think they have already specified the format for how you run the program somewhere at this document, like here. This is how we work with the program, how to run it. Okay, just make sure you follow all the stuff of the specification. Just one more thing is you must run your program in VLab because we will test your assignment under the VLab environment. And don't worry about too much about the corner case. For example, some bug, if you like the username, if it doesn't say some requirement about some cases, you don't need to worry too much about the corner case as we don't test the corner case. But if you have any doubts, just post it on the forum. So when you lose your mark, then you can say, you have already said you will not test this kind of case. So why I lose marks here? So if you have any doubts, just post the question on the forum and it will be the evidence if you lose any marks. Yeah, we will test the site with several private message. Yeah, probably will. We will create different terminal and try to do the private from A to B, B to C. That should be like a normal test case. But we haven't determined yet. But it sounds like a normal test case. Or we will test it. And a small trick to get more points. So if you find it really hard to complete all the program here, like here, one possible way to get more marks is to hard code your code. Like if they input this kind of stuff, and you just simply return this result, no matter the logic behind it. You can hard code for some function that you don't know. Right? It may, so it will not work at most of the time, but yeah, it can help you to it may help you to get more points. Just have some output of it, and probably, hopefully, and of course, the most important thing is the report. Even though there's no point for report, is it? I think there's no point for the report, right? Doesn't mention that. Yeah, I think so. You should have no points for reports, but yeah, the report I think is the most important thing because it will let us know how to run. Oh, 1 point, that would be good. It will teach us how to run your program. So you need to like write a document in your report, show some example how to run your program. Because if you are using different languages with different version, we may have some trouble to run your program. And if we find some trouble to run your program with the like formal way, you may lose marks. You may lose lots of marks by if we can't execute your program. Yes, but yeah, I would say the report will affect a lot during the marking because this one is really help us to understand your program. Even it is only one or have no point. I think this one is the most important thing that you need to do. So we still have 3 days. Just make sure you prepare well for your report. So it should contain this kind of stuff, the program structure to have some drawing like I showed you before. I can't find it. Just have some graph to show your structure or have some uh, description about it. And the data structure as well. This data structure will be like how your client and server communicate with each other and understand with each other. You can say you send a JSON format message between your client and message, and you can say, probably I just send a simple str, or even you just make a binary string or something. Just explain it. Yeah, of course, some improvement and some bug. If you find one of the function is really hard to implement it, just mention it in your report. Say, what have you tried? And what is the output now? Something like that. It will really help us to save our time to mark your assignment. So if you make your report really clear, probably you will get a high mark. Will we mark down do simple STR to normal impressive JSON sending protocol? Not really. We are not require you to implement the JSON stuff for the application protocol. Just make it work. We don't care about the application protocol is fancy or not. If it is working, it should be a good protocol. Yeah, just pay more attention for the reports. Even your like program is really, really good, have no problem at all. If your report is really poor, it may affect you in some point. Yeah, that's all for the assignment. Oh, I think that's all for the assignment. So just let me know if you have any doubts for your assignment because I know you care a lot about your assignment than the tutorial too. So just let me know if you have any doubt about it. And This part is for the future course. So if we still have time, we can have a look of it. Because the final exam and the assignment, I think most of you should not worry about it. Most of you will get a really good mark for those two. So I don't really worry about it. But you may think, oh, midterm exam is really hard. Probably the final will be really hard, the same, right? But I would say the average mark for final should be around 28 over 40. Yeah, so most of you will pass this course easily. Yeah, the midterm exam is really, really hard. I can fully understand because they want you to like study hard at the rest of the term. But the final will be easy for you. But in case you find it really hard, don't worry too much because all you need to do is to make sure you just like score higher marks than other students. Like if you can only score 10 marks on the final exam, but just make sure you are better than most of the students, then you will be fine. We will scale up. So don't be panic if you feel the final is very hard, even you prepare a lot. Communicating with each other clients without new socket is extremely a good point. Yeah. Uh, if you create a new socket like the server structure, if there's a new client connected to another client, if you create a new socket to handle it, it may be very complex. You need to handle how to open a subthread and how to close it when it is connected. And some future course I want to mention here. If you still interested in here, I think this one is pretty good. 614419441 security engineering. I think all the security course is really interesting. And they normally will taught by Richard Buckland. Highly recommended. And yeah, phosphorus is 686. A, a good start, really good course to get really high mark, I guess. Mobile data networking, quite similar as this one. And the IoT course, of course, this one you have a look of the IoT stuff. A lot of programming in this studio, really fun. They will give you something like Raspberry Pi or other IoT stuff, a robot. Yeah, last time I think they give you a robot for this course based on the Raspberry Pi. If you like programming, probably, yeah, this course is really good. And of course, the security. Uh, Security course will be very hard. Depends. So if you just want to get the distinction like 75. The security course is really, I can't say really easy, but it should be easy to score 75, but it's really hard to get HD 85 for the security course because uh, it is not only for the coding stuff, but also for the report writing, right? Because security always about, it's a combination of presentation and the programming. You really need to have an open mind. So if you find a little bit hard for other courses to like do the programming stuff, the security actually is a good idea, because in this kind of security course, we are not required to have lots of programming stuff, just some basic Python. And of course, this one, we are not requiring you have a very high uh, programming techniques for the security course. It's more about the reporting and open mind and presentation stuff. And for the other course, like here, it's more about concepts. So less programming, but more concepts, like the calculation at this course. You need to understand all the concepts and do the calculation like this course. If you like this course, probably you will like this three. And I would say most of this course will have a generous mark. So if you want to boost your RAM, maybe a good idea to choose these marks that should choose this course. But it really depends. You need to spend lots of time on this course to get a high mark, of course. Yeah. And yeah, just let me know if you have any doubts for your assignment. I think most of you are more care about your assignment. If you have any question or bug, if you want to show, but do not show your code. Of course, the tutorial. And if you have time, you can write some test case for the program to prove your program is working properly. And if you find some code from previous term, because we may have similar assignment for probably 1-2 years ago, you may find some code in GitHub or somewhere. Please do not copy the code directly, because they will check for the plagiarism. Yeah, just make sure all the code are typing by your hand. And for the tutorial, just because I think most of you didn't done it yet, so you just do it before I explain it. If you have any doubts, you can check the solution. We have already uploaded the solution for it. And yeah, if you still cannot understand, you can post it on the forum because don't want to explain the question before you done it. It is really good stuff to prepare your final exam. So you can go through the slide at first and then come back to the tutorial 2 and like just consider this one is your final exam and see how it goes and compare with the answer solutions. So if you cannot understand the solutions, you can just simply post your question on the forum and we will reply you like in probably 2 or 3 hours. So please let me know if you have any doubts. And I think that's all for our tutorial. And yeah, this one should be the last lab we have. And I wish you have a really good output for this course. And of course, if I did anything wrong with your lab marking, please let me know as soon as possible so we can fix it. And we still have like 40 minutes, so I will stay here and you can feel free to share your screen. I will stop sharing and stop the recording in case you have any doubt.